Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on this Founders AMA, where we will be discussing how we're making data mesh for event data governance a reality. My name is Avo. I'll be your host here today. And with me, I have the two founders of Avo, Stefania, our CEO and co-founder, and Solvi, our CTO and co-founder.
Nice. Hello. Us. Yes. Pleasure.
So this is an AMA. So we want to encourage you to drop questions. There should be a little button that says Q&A, where you can send us the questions and we'll do our best to answer all of them. We want to keep it casual, so just keep them coming and we'll try to answer them as they come. Afterwards, we will make sure to send you the recording. So if there are any of your colleagues or friends or family that didn't make it, then you can send them this recording. You can put it all over the internet. Highly recommend it. But yeah, I think that sums it up, some of housekeeping. Maybe Steph, you want to take it away and go through what we've been launching and why? What's up about it?
Yes. I couldn't be more excited to do exactly that. I was also just testing the chat here. I don't know exactly how functional it is. So let's see whether anyone can reply to me in the chat or whether it only works as something that the panelists can send to. And if that's the case,
I think it should work.
Yeah, you can always also send questions through the Q&A.
Yeah.
And otherwise, you will be able to send us a DM somewhere. Hey, yes, hi Cody, good to see you. Hede, I am going to replace your screen share, Hadla.
Yes, take it away.
And I think I'm sharing the right thing, am I?
You're sharing the blog.
Yeah, great. I'm sharing the blog. So what I wanted to walk through is we released sort of a three-post series leading up to the launch week that we just did recently. And then during launch week, we introduced 4 new concepts in the product and sort of a recap of it. And I just want to quickly walk through it so that you all have that context and overview. But we don't want to spend too much time in walking through things. We want to spend the most of our time in answering questions and thoughts that anyone has. We also did get some questions in advance, so we'll be walking through those, but we'll prioritize also live ones if we get them and otherwise follow up with them. So this was a 3-part series, like I said, on data mesh for event-based data. And so I want to just begin by introducing that concept a little bit. We have been talking about that concept for a while, and this is my prompt for sharing also my Figma. Do you see my Figma?
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you. So a quick walkthrough of the launch items. So we shipped guardrails, we shipped stakeholders, we shipped domain-specific data design, we shipped federated governance for multi-subsidiary organizations. So many mouthfuls there, but the core of it all is the why. And I'm just going to begin by introducing the data mesh principles for how we graduate through different data culture stages. And we do this also in the blog post that I just shared. So the data mesh principles are 4. They have been around for a few years. They went viral around 2021. I personally was a little bit allergic to them and was like, yet another framework that some consultant somewhere is introducing to explain how I should be doing my work. That was my initial sort of reaction to it, also because I didn't really feel like it was introducing anything new. But what I've since grown to like a lot about it is that it is a really tight and good framework for sort of how to think about the goals you want to achieve with your organization to reach a certain data maturity. And these are the principles. I'll walk through each of them, and then I'm going to touch on why it's relevant specifically for event-based data and what we have specifically been doing to let you apply them for event-based data. So the first one is we want domain-oriented ownership. So we want the domains in our business to own the data that they need. That means they create it, they process it, they visualize it, and they're basically self-sustainable in generating and consuming the data that they need for their business. The business as a whole treats data as a product. So just follow general product management principles. Think about the end user, think about the desirability, just all of those things. Read books like Marty Kagan's Inspired. Third one is always strive towards a self-serve data platform, meaning people can sort of reach the data that they need, not only from themselves, but also from other domains. So the domains should not only be thinking about how they themselves consume their data, they should also be fulfilling some federated governance sort of rules so that the domains are able to reuse data across domains. So these are the sort of rough ideas behind the data mesh principles. There's been a lot of discussion for a while now about the data mesh principles, but not a lot of actual practical advice on how to apply them for event-based data. So these initial posts here talk a little bit about how things are so broken in this way and why we need data mesh and data contracts specifically. Very excited. This is our dog. He's really excited about this webinar. Thank you for making an appearance, Lupe. And then sort of what are actually the scary parts of doing this? Why is it risky to let domains actually own your data? Because we have to understand that before we let them run free with it. We have to understand how what are the risks that we need to mitigate for when we migrate to this view of letting domains own their own data instead of having just a centralized governance for everyone. And then the final post in sort of this leading up to the launch week post is a recipe for a system to fulfill the data mesh principles for event data quality. I'm currently sharing my blog post, right? Yes, cool. So it's a 10-item checklist. We will be iterating on this, on sort of what systematic things need to be in place for you to be able to fulfill the data mesh principles for your event data. So really looking forward to your thoughts on these sort of posts, basically opinion pieces. And now jumping quickly into introducing each of the things that we actually released. So guardrails to codify the standards for your data design. I'm going to just jump really quickly through all of these, but the reason why I'm demoing all of this in this blog post format is to showcase that you have content where you can directly go and read more about all of these. And of course, you can always reach out directly to get a deeper demo on each of these. What this means, the codify standards for data design, is that you can define in your workspace, I think we have some examples here, a naming framework very rigorously. So you can define naming components of every single part of your event name, not only the casing and the framework of like object, action, object. You can also go very custom and define allowed words for your event names and just extend it the way you want to. So this has been really exciting. A common use case for this is a prefix before the object action for the product area or something like that. That's a common use case that we see. Stakeholders, we are introducing the concept of stakeholders. So we're documenting now in your schema, in your tracking plan, your events are associated to a specific domain, and the domains consist of teams and they have a relationship with the events. And in the future, they will have a relationship also with properties and metrics as well. So this is what we have introduced now, and this is just the beginning of the concept of domains. What we've already introduced is the ability to define these things, like to segment your schemas in your tracking plan down to domains, and then you can filter the tracking plan view down on a specific domain, and we have visions for taking that filtering even further. And the other important thing that we have already introduced is impacted stakeholders. So as soon as someone is documented as a stakeholder on an object in your schema, on your tracking plan, your event, and someone else that is not a part of that domain team stakeholder, if someone else makes changes to events that belong or have a different stakeholder, that stakeholder will be, you will see directly when you're editing that that stakeholder is going to be impacted. So if you're making changes to an event that belongs or has the checkout domain and the shipping domain as stakeholders, then you will know that you will need to get reviews from these stakeholders before you ship. And this is just the beginning in us taking sort of domain-specific reviews and domain-specific views to the next level, automatically pulling in the right reviewers, only review parts of the changes that are relevant to your domain, etc. Third introduction, the domain-specific data design or domain-specific schemas. And this is specifically to help define schemas at scale. So what we are seeing with our customers, as we have really big customers with very big organizations and complex schemas, a lot of events, and the different subsidiaries maybe, or the domains and the companies are using the same event in a different way or need a different subset of properties depending on where you're sending it from. And so we're introducing specifically now this week or that launch week the concept of event variants, where, for example, an add to cart event would belong to a checkout team as a stakeholder, but the search team is also a stakeholder and relies on that event. And the search team, the add to cart event has a cart product origin property, but the search team actually wants to create a variant of this where the cart product origin property is pinned to the search result page, because that's the only allowed value for this property at this point in time. And there's a new property that is required only for this context, which is the search term. And then the other thing here that we're introducing is event-specific property constraints. Very exciting as well. The fourth introduction here is federated event data governance for multi-subsidiary enterprises. So we have been just seeing a lot of appetite for companies that basically have been built over a long period of time through, for example, acquisitions. So you might have something like, I think as an example here, some entertainment company that has a newsreader subsidiary, a movie stream subsidiary, and a mega games subsidiary. And we've introduced specifically 2 items into the product for this: organizations, which is a collection of independent schema registries, which allows you then to have a centralized governance for a set of events that need to be kept in sync across the subsidiaries, but still allow each subsidiary to work fully independently with their own federated governance framework. So organizations and then centralized schemas are the actual product features that we're introducing to enable this. I am going to stop here and we are going to head into questions, I think.
Nice. Thank you so much, Stefania. Yeah, so for sure, drop the questions in the Q&A. We'll start with a question that we got earlier this week. So, since Avo is often referencing data mesh for event data, what can we do to actually apply these principles to data quality and our everyday workflows?
Yeah, oh, exactly. Okay, cool. That's basically, if I look at this, I'm sharing the blog posts right here.
Yeah.
If I look at this, I think I would probably just refer to this blog post, this recipe. So how do we actually get data mesh in practice? And I think the bigger question to ask yourself is, Do I even like the data mesh principles? Do I relate to them? So I think the first step there is sort of reading a little bit about reading this article here on why it's so broken and how data mesh principles can be applied to generally fix data. But historically, data mesh has been focused on like a org structure type of thing and what's happening in the warehouse, and there hasn't been a lot of focus on event data. So the checklist is basically framework for event names and level of abstraction. How are you going to refer to things? Are you going to have button click, generic button click for everything, or are you going to use the user intent? A way to enforce that naming convention. It's not enough to have the convention because people don't read the manual, turns out. And so this is something that we have always had some ways for this in place to enforce the naming convention, but we have now just graduated to the next level with guardrails. So I really encourage you to try playing around with setting up guardrails for your workspace. Single source of truth is really necessary. Some sort of event data observability, ideally upstream, so you can deal with it before it actually hits your warehouse and production. A way to sync all of your schema registries across, or sync your schemas across all schema registries. So the single source of truth only works if all other sources that have that information or need to refer to that information also have information that's up to date. Source control like code. This is something that is has always been very top of mind for us. It's instead of just having a spreadsheet, we really need to think about this as engineers. And what we have tried to do for that is bring the best out of like the Git experience for source controlling with the sort of human readable version of the single source of truth, which allows business stakeholders to actually collaborate, which JSON schemas on GitHub don't really do. Always design data use case first. We sometimes also think about this as metrics first data design. Also document how the events relate to metrics. This is also sometimes talked about or referred to as metrics store. And there are many reasons for why you want to do this. I'll refer to the post and further reading material. Document the ownership and stakeholders, and then alert when you're changing something that others own or depend on. So this is the current checklist. I want to hear your thoughts on what's missing from here. But yeah, back to you, Halla.
All right, thank you. Good to see the questions rolling in. Keep them coming. So let's go to the next one. I'm curious how stakeholder domains work and how Avo approaches this concept. What is a domain exactly, and what's the best way to add stakeholders?
Great question.
Right.
Solvi, do you want to take this?
Should we maybe just show the product?
Yes.
How about
Let's
that?
go.
Get out of this marketing materials stuff.
Okay, so this is an Avo demo workspace. And just like in any other workspace, including yours, there's now a new tab here called domains. There you can define domains, and domains are new set of units within the tracking plan. It consists of set of people. So the members of the tracking plan can be attached to belong to a domain, and also set of events and event variants. So you will be able to bridge essentially, it's like a documentational layer between the people in the tracking plan and the units in the tracking plan. So it really depends on your org structure, how you like, the way you like to work, how you like to define the domains, but maybe you can talk a little bit about how we are putting them into practice in the product as well, to help you make an educated decision on how you want to categorize it. We commonly see, for example, product teams being a domain. Like if I am on the checkout team or squad within my product team, then I might belong to the checkout domain. That would mean all of the events that we are creating in our code base is attached to that domain. So whenever someone is looking at those events, they can see that this domain is a stakeholder. So that is essentially, if we take a look here. So here we have the session start event, and you can see there are two stakeholders. So now we are aware of that there are two different domains interested in like the the shape of this event. So if you're modifying it or making changes to it, these domains and the people attached to these domains should probably be kept in a loop on that. So you should make sure you're aligned with them. Same applies for variants, and that makes this really powerful from the domain specific design perspective. So for example, I think we have a variant specific domain here somewhere. So here. So for example, you can have a stakeholders on the message sent event, but then you might have some more specific use case that some other domain is particularly interested in. So they might tailor it, like Stef had in the search team example in the e-commerce flow. And then you can attach a different set of stakeholders there. So that's how you can grow the schemas in complexity while managing, limiting the set of stakeholders on each and every specific event or event variant. So this is really valuable already just from the documentation perspective and being able to filter and see like all of the events belong to your domain, etc. But we've also taken it a bit further. So we've already introduced impacted stakeholders. So if I go ahead now and create a branch, let's just create like, I'm actually just gonna go ahead and create a new branch, demo of 22. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add a new property to the message sent event. So I might be on some team somewhere and I'm like, I need this property on this event and it should be product type for whatever reason. And then you can see here at the top. So you can now see that branch you're on top of the screen all the time. So that's one big improvement and made it easier to just access viewing the changes. But we did that because we wanted to bring this information front and center all the time when you're making modifications. So now just by adding this property, I was made aware you're impacting a stakeholder. So you're impacting the messaging stakeholder, which you don't belong to. So you can see the magenta color here indicates is calling extra attention because I am not part of the messaging team. If I were only impacting stakeholders that I am myself part of, then this would be more subtle, like in a grayish kind of muted color. So whenever you see like a pink bubble here on the top, you might want to validate like, okay, is that actually what I want to do? Or would I rather like to go ahead and just like create the product variant where I can then only apply this particular property to that variant, and then I'm not impacting the stakeholders on the original event. So that's how we are seeing stakeholders and domain-specific schemas play together. And that's actually why we prioritize the variants and all of that stuff, because we had the vision for this and we wanted to bring you the tools also to reduce the impact when you're making changes. So that's like important to piece those two puzzles together. Going forward, we will be looking into applying this to the review workflows, for example. So maybe you'll be able to define like in a domain saying if certain events that this domain is a stakeholder or an owner of are modified, they need to come in and they should be required to approve them. So that's few like, pointers of where this is headed. And I hope that helps you think about how you want to shape the domains within your organization. If you're still have no idea how you want to do it, I would just love to have a 50-minute, 30-minute call. So just reach out and we can have a conversation. Did that answer the question, Halla? It was a pretty long answer. I'm sorry.
It was a great answer, totally. And if it didn't, please drop it in the questions or in the chat. But we do have another question. So, as a big fan of Avo and a daily user, I have always appreciated that you are so responsive to requests from your customers. These new features will have long-term impact in creating a seamless centralized event governance. With the new features you are rolling out, it has made me curious how you see the tool growing in the next 5 years. Great question.
Nice. Yes.
How much time do we have? 2 hours?
Exactly. Thank you for this question, Ursula, and thank you for always taking the time to help us build a better Avo, and both giving us good and bad feedback all the time so that we can grow and build a better product for you. Vision question, and it ties into also, I see some other questions here as well related to how might Avo take this further. I think like when we think about basically just the what we're focused on now, what we're going to focus on for the next months and year at least, there are two things that we are very obsessed over right now. Number one is scalability of governance. And so a lot of things that we've been talking about here, more in the domain ownership, more in sort of managing schemas at scale and the complexity of that, the stakeholders, the communications around it, the data design around it, just all that stuff. The second part is end usability, end user experience, I would say, because, and they're very related really. What we're seeing now as we get more and more huge companies adopting Avo, which is great and very exciting, is they all want to graduate, like I shared in the data maturity sort of curve, they all want to graduate from something that's centrally governed to something that's self-serve governed. And that is the best way to manage this at scale. It's the domain ownership, it's the prerequisite for it, really. So what we are seeing there is that means a lot of people that are far from being experts, that have been willing, like historically, a lot of people that have been adopting Avo have been willing to sort of walk through fire dice to make a lot of things work, because there are so many great things about the experience within Avo and the capabilities. But we're also seeing now that as companies are trying to scale Avo into every part of their organization, there are just things there that where the spreadsheet still wins from an experience perspective. There's also a lot of our customers that are talking about needing and wanting to document these things and have conversations about the data design during the data design step within something that's more visual than like a schema or a list. So a lot of our customers actually work in Figma or Miro to sort of have conversations about the user flow and where events should be tracked along that and things like that. So that's that, and also sort of like being able to change things more quickly and more along the lines of the experience of a spreadsheet. This is just short term though. This is like a part of our short term vision. It just is, things at scale for large companies. How do you actually are able to roll things out and manage things at scale, and then the experience, the end user experience for everyone involved there. When we look at the sort of the longer term, like the 5 years, that's a really exciting question, and we would always love to have those conversations. So Ursula, feel free to schedule us for beer sometime. We see Avo as a governance platform that needs to be able to govern a really large part of the data stack, because the event data journey starts when you emit an event from a client or a backend, but then it goes through a lot of different stages in your journey, or in its life cycle, and helping customers manage the data structures through these life cycles, and tying the event data to other things as well, for example, your Stripe data or something like that, and then integrate with your entire stack to make sure data is right throughout your entire stack is something that we are really excited to stretch into. And the other angle of that is going way deeper and higher up the design, or higher upstream, I guess, into the data design experience and streamlining that for non-data people, for like product managers, collaboration style. Solvi, what do you want to add to that?
I think I just agree. And yeah, I have a lot of that, but I'm just also excited to get into more questions.
Yeah, exactly. Kathy has a great question as well. Thank you, Kathy. As an organization which has many subsidiaries tracking their own features, how could Avo enable subsidiaries to discover what others are tracking and that they can reuse and leverage on? Solvi, do you want to take this?
Yeah, definitely. So the vision we have for this is like you have a tracking plan in Avo today, and within the tracking plan, we are constantly surfacing what is already existing within the tracking plan. So if you're adding a property to an event, we surface all of the potentially relevant properties before we introduce the option to create a new one. Same applies when adding events to metrics, etc., etc. So now we're introducing, number one, we're introducing domains into the workspace. And that might mean we might start we have the ability to filter by domains today, but we might go further than that and apply more like native filtering. So domain members can just focus on the stuff that matters to them. And then at like the right moment, surface what is relevant from other domains. And that same pattern then applies for organizations with multiple tracking plans. Because that's essentially like the ultimate filter. You're just like in your isolated tracking plan. You're not interfering directly with anything outside of your tracking plan. So the idea we have there, we haven't come up with a good term for it. So sorry, Simon. I know you have a strong opinion against this term, but within a single tracking plan, we have a namespace, as we call it. So all of the events have their namespace. So you can only create a one type of each event name to avoid conflicts, etc. The idea we have for connecting multiple workspaces or multiple tracking plans together is what we call or refer to as currently loosely tied namespaces. So what we want to do there is when you are, for example, adding a property to an event in one tracking plan, we should be surfacing what is existing in other tracking plans, making it clear, like differentiate clearly for you, like what is already in your tracking plan versus what is in other tracking plans, but then make it super easy for you to, for example, clone what you see good from done well in other workspaces into your tracking plan. So you can then evolve that in any direction you would like and reuse it. So that is kind of the way we are headed. But we'll definitely get more feedback directly from you, Kathy, on that. So just look forward to getting your thoughts on that and to continue that conversation. But ideally, it's basically we want to build like a search engine across the organization, but then just allow you to clone and keep the independence within each tracking plan.
Yes. Good. Nice. Thank you, Solvi. This is like, there's so much that is exciting about exactly this. I think we're probably at time for this one. Halla, what do you think, right?
I think so. We had scheduled half an hour. We could go on forever.
Yes, we could go on.
I think we might need to do a follow-up one.
Exactly. Am I sharing Figma here?
Yes,
yeah.
You are.
So recap here that you can find all these blog posts that we refer to here on avo.app/blog. And if you want to continue the conversation, of course, always feel free to email us, support@avo, also the in-app chat. And then we encourage you to join our community Slack, therighttrack.avo.app. You can find the link to that Slack there and request access. With that, we will probably say adieu for now.
Yes.
We will do another deep dive like this in early mid-November. So if there's anyone, your friends, your family, your coworkers that missed this one, that you think it would be valuable for them to join, aunties, cousins, yeah, let them know.
For sure. And if you have any special requests on things you want to know, learn about more in Avo, feel free to drop us a message. We'd love that. Some feedback. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.